Good morning, everyone. Welcome to day 2 of the Paris Blockchain Week Summit. I'm very honored to welcome the first panel for today and very excited to share that it's a majority female panel. So yeah, please welcome our panelists to the stage. So before I start, this discussion is going to be about why blockchain organizations should move to France. Paris is fast becoming a crypto-friendly and finance-forward hub, making itself the best option for EU and UK fintechs looking for a new home. Taking advantage of this opportunity, France has just passed the Pact Bill to help startups grow with flexible compliance measures. Could France be the future hub of blockchain businesses? Joining me to answer this is, I'll start from my left, Michael Amar, the co-host of the Paris Blockchain Week Summit. Congratulations on putting an amazing summit. And he's also the co-founder of Chain Accelerator, a blockchain accelerator based here at Station F that supports companies that are making the world more secure and transparent and fair. Next, we have Domitille Dessertine, the head of FinTech Innovation and Competitiveness at Financial Markets Authority, the independent body that regulates the French financial sector. And then we have Kat Borlongan, I hope I'm pronouncing your last name right, the director of La French Tech, a government-led initiative that is building out infrastructure and legislation to make France an attractive option to startups. And lastly, we have Nadia Filali, who's the blockchain program director at the Deposits and Consignments Fund, the 2-century-old arm of the French government. So welcome, everybody. So to start with, we're going to be talking about why Paris and France has an attractive blockchain ecosystem. So Michael, firstly, how would you describe the French blockchain ecosystem today?
Hi, everyone. So actually, it's much more vivid than people usually think from outside of France. We are working on amazing things. So Domitille specifically will talk about regulation. But it's a very attractive regulation for blockchain project. As you know, other countries like the US have been took very strong position kind of against token sales. So it's left, for example, I will tell you that for Chain Accelerator, we have 50% of the startups applications that are coming from the US because the landscape is much more attractive. So we have regulations, we have talent. So I see here, for example, Nomadic Labs, which is actually working on the Tezos core technology. And few people know that Tezos is actually 50 meters from here. Yeah. And they have dozens of PhD from the INRIA, which was the main research center in France, so it's like the best scientists coming in, and we have a huge pool of cryptographers and talents that really knows how to deal with cybersecurity and the core asset that needs to be, to develop, that you need to have, and knowledge you need to have to develop on the blockchain. If you add to this the French tech ecosystem, the vibrant startups, as you can see with the environment we are here at Station F, which is the largest incubator in the world, I think we are a very good landing pad potentially for large blockchain projects.
Cool, that's very exciting, very interesting. Kat, what have you been working on with La French Tech and, in order to create an environment that attracts startups to France?
Sure, so like if I gave you the pure sort of B2B pitch as to why a company should come here, there are a bunch of things. There's one of the most favorable like R&D tax credit system in all of Europe, which is the Jeune Entreprise Innovante, which basically slashes tax credits down for startups that move here. There's kind of like all of the stuff about the talent pool that we have, the reason why we're starting to see companies like Facebook, like Google, like Microsoft set up their AI centers here. But at the end of the day, I think that when you talk about startups coming to France, you're still talking about people. And the question at the end of the day is, why would a person want to come to France? And I think this is the case, which you'll notice for a lot of the startups that are here at Station F. First and foremost, you basically get the chance to live in one of the greatest cities in the world and work for one of the, work for a killer startup. So in terms of the ecosystem, France raised something like 3.6 billion last year, just second only to the UK in Europe. We're attracting VC funding faster and massively more than any other country here. But again, at the end of the day, it comes down to a very individual decision on, if you do want to pursue these kind of things, what city do you want to pursue it from?
Yeah, that's interesting. So, and Domitille, how is the regulator trying to create an ecosystem that supports startups in France?
Well, I think our particularity is that we've been both very open and very serious about blockchain right from the beginning. We started to meet with startups in the blockchain environment almost 2.5 years ago. And this was, I think, very interesting, and it helped us a lot when building the regulatory frameworks that I think we will discuss further on later. It was very interesting because I think that we need collectively in the regulatory community to gain a deeper understanding of what is blockchain, how does that work, how the environment is structured. And in turn, I also think that the blockchain startups need to gain a deeper understanding of the regulatory ecosystem and the rules, how do they apply in the blockchain environment. And this mutual dialogue was very, very precious, and it really helped us in understanding this environment. So, for instance, we had the Unicorn program, which was a support program which we launched in October 2017. And under which we met with more than 80 startups that were contemplating launching an ICO in France. But then we also expanded very quickly this program to other types of startups in the blockchain environment. So be they trading venues or custodians or advisors or just some startups building some blockchains. And very early on, we tried to associate as well the people from the supervisory and from the licensing teams, which was also very rich because we tried also to make them gain a deeper understanding of the blockchain environment, which will be, we think, very rich when they will start to supervise this environment.
Cool. Yeah, that sounds like you're, making a lot of efforts and, putting in place a couple of initiatives to do that. Nadia, it'll be also great to hear from you about, what you think the most important elements are to building a conducive blockchain ecosystem in France.
I think the first thing that we have to do, and we do it well, I think in France, is collaboration. We are working on blockchain, so we have to collaborate, big corporates, startup, regulator, and I think we do that very well in France. And we began very well with the regulator now more than 3 years ago on the subject. We have also experimentation and works in different industries, not only in finance. You can see that big company like Total, Engie, Carrefour, or banks are working on the subject. We have the talents, and Michael talked about INRIA. We have also many people in IRT Systemics, for example, in Saclay working on that. Now in some university and big schools working on the subject, for example, with École Polytechnique, who is working on how to develop the business and to have value on blockchain recently. And I think we have something particular in France. I don't know if in English you will understand, but for me, blockchain, it's really anti-Jacobin technology. So we are the king of centralization, and the society is going to change, and we try to go to decentralization. So it's a huge opportunity for all the ecosystem to be heard by the population who want to change the game, to the company who want to change the game. And I think it's one of our particularity and paradox of the French, that we can do that. After that, I think that we have another point that is very important, that in Europe, we began with the regulatory to work on that, and we are the first to put a regulation on some points. And we can be a leader and an attractive country to open the market in Europe. And I think it's important because France, it's a small country, so we will not do it alone. But if the startups and the companies come here to work with us on blockchain, we can go more larger on Europe.
Yeah, that's interesting. And in terms of attracting startups, I think one of the most important things is looking at the regulation and the regulatory framework that is supportive for startups, because up until maybe before Brexit, London and the UK has been seen as the fintech hub of the world, but that has now since changed because there are other fintech hubs emerging like Paris. So it would be good to hear from Domitille about could you talk us through the highlight features of the French regulatory framework and the elements that would be attractive for blockchain businesses that are looking for a place to set up?
Sure. I think one very important element to remember with this framework is that it's very comprehensive. So it covers both the regulatory aspects, but also the accounting and tax aspects, which is something very important for entrepreneurs that are working in blockchain. And I believe France is one of the, I would say, first country to propose such a comprehensive framework. So as Bruno Le Maire said on Monday, a bill was recently adopted by the Parliament, so the Pact Law, which is actually far-reaching. It covers a lot of different aspects. But it also introduces two new regimes for crypto assets. So the first one is the ICO regime, which basically will provide the opportunity for companies that are planning to undertake an ICO to ask for an optional visa from the regulator. And the second regime is what we call the virtual asset service providers. So it's an intermediary regime for market players that propose services such as trading venue, custodian, portfolio management services, advisory. So it's very also comprehensive. It covers a lot of different types of services. And again, this regime was built on two different pillars. So the first one is the AML rules that these players will need to abide by. And the second pillars is some, I would say, common rules to all different types of services, so very basic rules, such as the need to have an insurance, the need to have robust IT systems, but then very specific rules depending on the type of service that the players will offer. And again, this license will be to a large extent optional. And this is a particularity of this new framework, which we thought made sense because we are very early stage in the blockchain. And we are also very cognizant of the fact that not all the blockchain-based business models will fit from the outset within the regulatory framework. So these are the two new regimes. An important element also that was introduced by Pact is the fact that certain types of professional investment funds will be allowed to invest in crypto assets. So this was not the case before. So we also think this is a significant improvement, which will also probably help the ecosystem to grow. And finally, something that was not introduced by Pact, but which is worth also noticing, is that to some extent, France was also very ahead of the curve because 2 years ago was adopted the blockchain order, which allows, under certain conditions, security tokens offering, because it allows to issue some securities from the outset on a blockchain technology. And this is also something that we think that we were one of the first countries to adopt.
It's interesting to hear that that the French government has put a lot of thought into putting this law through and considering all those different elements, because the technology is fast emerging and it's just changing all the time. So it's interesting to hear that. It'll be good to also get a perspective from an entrepreneur that has run a couple of businesses in Paris and hear from you, Michael, about how friendly has it been for you to grow a business here?
So I think I have an interesting point of view because I have a gap of 10 years. I've built a couple of businesses in the 2000, and then I moved to Silicon Valley actually for another 10 years, and just recently came back. So there is a huge difference. So I won't describe a very exciting picture if I tell you my experiences as a first-time entrepreneur in the 95, 2000 area. It was really tough. It was a lot of hurdles. It makes your skin a little bit harder. That's good too. And it has completely changed. It has changed, I would say, mostly for the first steps of entrepreneurship in a very radical manner. You can see it with this building and this initiative of Station F. You can see it with the French Tech. And by the way, I just want to also thank them a lot. They've been instrumental in helping us organizing this conference.
Yep.
Thanks, Kat. So you can see a lot of investment, a lot of funds that were not here 10 years ago, a lot of angel investors, I mean, thousands, I guess, now, where there were only, a few dozens 15 years ago. So it's changed a lot. I think the younger generation also is much more international. They've been kind of forced in their courses to go do some of the studies outside. It has changed. They can speak English better than me. That's great. So I would say investment, ecosystem, openness from the corporates with the labs, incubation, and a lot of, much more open-minded corporates to work with startups. So it's much more exciting today. We still have work to do for the later stage, and we need to build larger unicorns. And we need to think with the blockchain, we have a huge opportunity. And one of them is that for once, the innovation is not coming only from Silicon Valley, right?
Yep.
It's coming from everywhere on the blockchain. And we have the talent here, and we have the ecosystem to, we think we can be one of the connecting nodes that are important to validate the full blockchain ecosystem.
Yeah, because there are a couple of notable blockchain startups that are already here in Paris and have started from Paris. I mean, like Ledger, they have a big office here, right? And then you mentioned Tezos.
Ledger, Tezos, iExec,
Yeah.
A5.
Yeah, so there's quite a few, significant companies here. Nadia, how important is it that blockchain businesses kind of strictly comply with regulations here in France?
First of all, I think that we don't have to regulate blockchain, but the usage of blockchains. For me, it's important, and I think that the pragmatic view of the regulator in France, it's a good way to develop blockchain and crypto assets, because we are talking about blockchain, but we have also some point on crypto assets. And so for the moment, in France, we have the law on law pact on ICOs. We can also we can do the post market on securities and funds when we are in the French law on the blockchain, and it's going to develop because we launched, for example, liquid share with Caisse des Dépôts, BNP, Société Générale, and others, and it's good for us to have those law to prove that blockchain is work on some subject. After that, we have a particularity, I think, in France, that we are in civil law and not in common law. And so something for me is important to make one of the main point of blockchain to allow in the law that if you put something in a blockchain, there is a value on that, and it's a grid certification, and you can do it. But because it's in the civil law, it's a little bit difficult, because if you open the door, you open the door for everyone. So I think it will take some time, but we have to perhaps to do this revolution, and to do this revolution and do it with thinking about the cybersecurity, the governance on blockchain, etc. But the technology is immature. We don't know the future of that. But if we don't try and we close all the door, we will not go on the subject.
Yeah.
But I think we are in the good way here.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it sounds like it's moving in the right direction, and
yes.
And part of that is a great transition to hearing from Kat about the La French Tech Visa that you've been working on. Could you tell us about that and how you built that?
Yeah, sure, but maybe just a sort of quick note before that, because I realized that the panel is called "Why Blockchain Organizations Should Move to France," and kind of like 3 out of the 4 speakers are pretty much state, and then Michael, who's been an incredible wingman actually for for France as a country and as an ecosystem, and to talk about the visa and just to sort of put that into perspective, I really believe that when you're a startup, the country that you decide to live in becomes de facto your meta chief legal officer, your meta, human resource team, your meta, like everything really. And so, so far we've been talking about what the sort of chief legal officer on the countryside has been doing. But maybe I can tell you a little bit about what we're doing in terms of HR. The truth is that when you are a startup and you want to hire abroad, your whole country is hiring with you. That when people make a decision as to where they go, where they're going to live, they don't just think about what they're going to be doing from like 9 to 7, right? They're going to think about what they're doing over the weekends, where their kids are going to go to school, what their life is going to be like. And so the thing for us that was the most important, actually, as like the French Tech mission, was making sure that those decisions were even possible. So if you answer one of the easiest answers to the question why blockchain organizations should move to France, the first is that you can. You and all of your employees. So we just put in place one of the most powerful startup employee visas in the world. It's called the French Tech Visa for employees. And what makes it powerful is essentially the fact that it's super simple. Most other visas in the world, work visas would require you to prove, let's say, that in 3 months you were unable to find somebody with the same profile in the same country. They're also going to ask you for a minimum diploma requirement. They're also going to ask you maybe to, someone's going to examine the application of the applicant and then match it to the job description. We took all of that out. So basically today, since March 1st, really, any startup in France can hire anyone they want, and it's fast-tracked as well. So we automatically put all of the job applications, all of the visa applications for startups on top of the pile.
Yeah, that's interesting. And so when was that visa put in place?
So the executive order that created the visa came into place, came into effect on March 1st. So it's already active now. We've already had like over 400 startups that have requested it since March. It's working pretty well, I'd say. So far, so good.
Yeah, cool. And if I was a startup here and I wanted to hire, how long can my employees actually stay? Like, how long is the visa for?
Yeah, so the visa, thank you for giving me the opportunity to pitch a bit more things. So the visa is valid 4 years. It's valid 4 years, and it's valid not just for the employee, but also for their families. So it's, yeah.
Sounds like a really generous visa that, it's kind of hard to find when, especially, nowadays when we're living in such a global world, people are moving around a lot. So, that sounds like a really friendly visa, and it's amazing that you put that together.
So technically anyone here, if you're walking around, you're meeting, startups in blockchain or whatever, you talk to them, it works out, there's an opportunity, they can get you and your family here in a month.
And now we're going to be discussing about the high, investment opportunities for startups here in France. And Nadia, as the blockchain program director of the French investment arm, what initiatives have you set out to do to kind of support investments for startups here?
So, Caisse des Dépôts Group have two parts. One part to invest directly in the company. It's the role of BPI France, and I think that they will go on blockchain, and I'm sure of that. And we have also another part. That's the part of Caisse des Dépôts named Banque des Territoires, and we invest in all the territories on infrastructure projects with startups. We began to do that in Marseille, in the south of France, with the government on supply chain and the logistic on the containers in the port of Marseille. We are sometimes also building company like we do with Liquid Share that we launched directly. In few days we will announce another kind of company, but I cannot talk about that now, but it's in few days. And also what we do directly, we try first to make the ecosystem work together. It's what we do when we launched LabChain, that it's a consortia for banks, insurance, and startup. And we decided 4 years ago to make the big and the small work together, because the talents were in the small company and not in the big, and to make work together and make business together. The role of Caisse des Dépôts is to be neutral, and for us, we don't make business with the others directly, but we make the others make business each other. Is very important, and I think Monsieur Bruno Le Maire announced that we will go on the investment through what we said in France, Programme d'investissement d'avenir, PIA. Caisse des Dépôts and BPI France are working on the Programme d'investissement d'avenir also.
Awesome.
And I think that at one point it's important to know, because it's not as well known, that there is a program of investment on blockchain and IA on the European Commission for 300 million euros. And so I think that you have to apply on that if you look from money.
Yeah, I'd love to hear more about that. Unfortunately, we're run out of time, but before we wrap up this panel, it'd be great to just get maybe a summary point from each of our panelists here, like quick, maybe like 10-second one-liner. Why should blockchain businesses consider coming to France? Maybe starting with Michael.
I think we're ready, right? We have over 1,000 attendees that are non-French today and tomorrow, in yesterday, sorry. So I think they're saying that we're ready. We can talk peer-to-peer with a great landing pad for talents, for investment, and with the regulation now.
Great. Domitille?
Well, because of legal and regulatory certainty, I think it's very important. And again, because we have built this comprehensive framework, I think we are also open regulators, so they can very easily come and see us. And finally, because there is, I think, a vibrant ecosystem here in France with both startups, institutionals, corporates, regulators, very keen on working on blockchain projects.
Perfect. Kat?
I would say the talent pool, which is very tech heavy in France in particular, and not just the existing talent pool, but the future one. So given that we now have the most open immigration policy regarding tech, anyone looking to build an international blockchain company can be able to do so from here and bring everybody they need in a matter of weeks.
Great. And Nadia?
Because we have an enthusiastic ecosystem, I think, in France. We have talents, and we are in Paris, and we are in France, and we are opening to innovation.
All right, well, thank you very much to my panelists. Could everyone please give them a round of applause? Awesome. And I realized I didn't introduce myself, but I'm Samantha Yap. I'm the founder of Yap Global. Thank you very much for your time this morning.